Okay, this discussion is a very, very important one that I know we've put it off towards the end of the semester, but it's something that's very, very important to make sure that we get correct when we are writing any type of essay. And this is citing your sources. Okay? We have two things that we need to talk about when citing sources. The first is the in-text citation or the parenthetical note, and that's the stuff that goes inside the parentheses. And the second thing is the works cited page that comes at the very, very end. All right. So the first reason that we even talk about citations is why do we do that? Why do they require students to cite sources and put those little parentheses? And why are we so anal about getting it exactly, specifically correct? Okay. The first reason, just like it says right here after the colons, is it keeps you safe. Okay? One of the things that we have to remember is that whenever we pull in outside information, we must, for the sake of honesty, tell where that information came from. And the reason we do that is that if we use somebody else's work and we don't tell anyone that we've used that, we have stolen some of their research. So imagine working really hard on coming up with this great and wonderful, brilliant idea, and then somebody passes it off as their own. That's not cool, okay? Because you would feel cheated, all right? So for in-text citation, these parenthetical notes, the stuff inside the parentheses, whenever you pull in information from an outside source, you must cite that source of information. And there are several different ways to do this correctly. If you could do it one way throughout and make it consistent, the thing that I would tell you to do is to always put the author of the information next to the title so that you can just tell us where you got it from. Okay, so it's always best to reference the author of the work before you bring in the outside information. That way your parenthetical notes are smaller. We don't want these huge, big old long things. Also, we want to know all of that information as much as possible. Okay, and the second thing that we have to make sure that we do is to make sure that the period goes after the parentheses. Okay, but whenever you're using a question or an exclamation point, it goes inside the quotation mark. And I'll show you examples of this to make sure that you understand and are doing it correctly. Okay, but let's move on, and I want to show you both in APA and MLA style how to do things correctly. Okay, so whenever you directly quote somebody, you must put their words in quotation marks. And the rule of thumb is if the quote is 3 lines or less, then you put the quotation marks around it and you put it word for word. Okay? So let's take a look at this example. If the amount of text is less than 3 lines, use quotation marks to indicate that you are quoting someone directly. And this is when you don't mention the author before the quote. So you got some great information, you pulled it from some source, you're using the exact words, it's less than 3 lines of text. We have, quote, scientists estimate that the range-wide population of the San Joaquin kit fox prior to 1930 was 8,000, quote. You put the parenthesis, you put the last name of the author of the source, and if it's from a book, then you put the page number, and parenthesis, period. Now, the reason we don't put the period right there is because the period ends the sentence, and although that is the end of the information, the end of the sentence is here. Okay, and I'm going to pull up Google Drive, and I'm just going to show why this is important. Okay, here we go. Let's say someone said Mr. Weller is a fantastic human being. Okay, that's their sentence. Someone quoted it, and so I'm going to put in their citation, and someone named with the last name of Smith, with a wooden leg named Smith. They said it, and that's all we know. It wasn't a quote. All right, and so I'm going to keep going with my essay. Mr. Weller is a fantastic human being. He always likes to make people smile. Okay. Now, if we take a look at this right here, this parenthetical note, this citation belongs with this sentence because Mr. Smith or Mrs. Smith, whoever said that, quoted this. But take a look at what happens. We take out that quote, and that parenthetical note now belongs to that next sentence. Smith said he always likes to make people smile. And that's why the period after the parentheses is so important. Okay, so we're going to fix that. We are going to put that period right where it belongs. Okay. Now, in that page, what if it's a question? Mr. Weller is a fantastic human being, Smith asked. Okay. Because we need to note that it is a question instead of just a statement, we put in the question mark right here, but we have that period remain after the parenthetical note. Okay. If Smith was super excited when they said that, we put in the exclamation point to denote that excitement. So we put in the exclamation point, but we leave the period where it is. Okay, it's that simple. And the reason we do that is so that this citation can remain with this sentence. So the entire sentence is this. Because that parenthetical note does not belong with that next sentence. Okay, I hope that helps. All right, so let's go back to this. So MLA, we just put the page number in. If it's from a book, if it's from a website, we just have a simplified URL. We don't give the entire URL because that's messy. But if it's an APA, you have to say the year in addition. And if it's a page number, you have to put the P that indicates the page. That's the only difference, okay, with in-text citation. APA and MLA works cited pages work differently, and you will read the chapter and take a look and see the rules for that, okay? But for a direct quote, whether MLA or APA, if you don't tell us the author's name before the direct quote, you have to put the author's last name in this in-text citation or parenthetical note. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, when the author is mentioned, okay? Why is there a quotation mark right there? That shouldn't be there. All right, let's take a look. So Hildebrand, that's the author of the article. Hildebrand, in some article, we should put the article right there in order to be fair, states that, quote, generals of Alexander the Great brought news to Europe of vegetable wool which grew in tufts of trees in India, quote, page 144. But since we already put the author's name there, we do not need to put it here because that would be redundant. Okay, if people want to know further information, they can see in the works cited page that Hildebrand on page 144 in whatever article, and they can go look that up. Okay, same thing with APA style, except instead of putting the year in the citation, the year always goes with the last name. Why is there a quotation mark right there? Let's fix that. Okay, so same thing. Hildebrand 2004 in parentheses states that, quote, generals of Alexander the Great brought news to Europe of vegetable wool which grew in tufts of trees in India. P for page, if it's from a book or a newspaper or an article, 144, parenthesis, period. Okay, so remember, 3 lines or less is the standard rule to use these quotation marks. Okay, now what if, hang on. Okay, before I jump into that, what if you don't use direct quotes, but you just summarize information? Are you just clear from using parenthetical notes? No, you must still tell us the source of the information. You must make a parenthetical note, use that in-text citation to make sure you are giving proper credit, Even if you're not using word for word, you're still bringing in that outside information. So in MLA, 3 lines or less, that it's summarized, it is common to see an osprey make its nest on an electronic power pole, said askew on page 34. Okay? There's no quotation marks, but it is outside information that the general public doesn't really know about. I didn't know that ospreys make its nest on electronic power poles. I didn't know that. And so because I didn't know that, the general public doesn't know that, we've got to put it in that citation. Okay? Same kind of deal with APA. We've got the year right after the last name, and we put the page number in. Okay? So now what we need to do is talk a little bit about how to cite a source when you are using a direct quote that is more than 3 lines of text. And what I want to do for this is I want to go to KSL and I want to look up an article, and let's see, I don't want to know about that. That's gross. Oh, that's so sad. Ooh, U.S. Supreme Court Breyer will officially retire on Thursday. There's some good information in here. And if I wanted to quote this entire thing, I'm just going to copy this, and I'm going to come to my document. The Supreme Court. Let's see if that works.